Okay, so we're going to do this asynchronously, talking about this Jamboard and what's coming up. So you guys should have the Jamboard open. It's linked in the agenda, and you should also have your notes out, please. The first thing we're going to do is talk about an expression versus an equation, which we had on our check-in last night. If we were in person or doing this synchronously, I would ask you for examples of an expression, but since I am doing it this way, I am just going to give you some examples of an expression. So something like 4s is an expression. Something like 3y plus 2z is an expression. Something like 6t plus 4, that's an expression. What I want you to take away, and what I'm sure you've already noticed, is that expressions do not have equal signs. So no equal signs. You also don't have a solution. So you can evaluate an expression, like if I told you up here that s equals 2, you can evaluate what 4 times 2 is, but we're not solving for a variable like you do in equations. Now, that leads me into my next talking point about equations. So some examples would be 6x equals 30, or 5y plus 2z equals 45. You don't have to solve these, but what I want you to take away is that equations do have equal signs, and you are solving. There is a solution. So the biggest difference between expressions and equations are that equations have equal signs, which means you can solve for them. Okay, and most of you got that on the check-in, but again, I just wanted to reiterate. The next thing we're going to do, go on to the next slide, are let statements. So you're going to be doing this with your recipe. So we're going to practice right now. We're going to pick a variable for this one. This is a recipe for strawberry sorbet. So it's kind of like ice cream, just without the milk. And what we're going to do is make an expression like we had in our working recipe. So let's say we let S equal cups of sugar. We're picking a variable S, and that's equal to the units of whatever ingredient you have. So cups of sugar. So I've got cups of sugar here. The next one that I have are teaspoons of cornstarch. So let's say I pick T, let T equal teaspoons of cornstarch. Perfect. For cups of water, I'll let W equal cups of water. And then for strawberries, maybe I will say B. Let B equal cups of strawberries. So now that I have my let statements, literally everything here says let a variable equal some unit of measure of an ingredient. So you have to have the unit. So we've got cups, cups, teaspoons, teaspoons, cups, 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 and cups. Or you've got to have the unit in your let statement. So now if we're making an expression, so we're not going to have an equal sign. Let's make an expression for this recipe similar to what we saw in our working recipe. So if I'm trying to represent cups of sugar, I have 1 cup of sugar. So I can say 1s. And then I'm going to add an ingredient to that for this recipe. Most of the time in math, though, you're not going to see 1s. Anytime there's a variable by itself, we can assume that the coefficient is 1. So we're going to add now our teaspoons of cornstarch. So we have 1.5 teaspoons. So 1.5 is my coefficient. T is our variable. So plus 1.5 T. We have 2 cups of water. So 2 is our coefficient. And then our variable is W. And then last but not least, we have 2 cups of strawberry, and B is our variable. So Our coefficient is 2. The variable is b. And then we've got our expression for this recipe. So if you're taking notes, you need, for your let statements, a let statement must include the word let. It must include the variable. It must include the unit of measure, which you get from your recipe. And it must have the ingredient. Let's try the next one on slide 9. This is going to be really similar to what you're doing today. So we have our expression given to us, just like you had your expression given to you in the working recipe. And now what we're going to do is write let statements based on the expression. So I need to find what variable gives me 2, because I'm looking at 2 cups of spinach. So which variable has the coefficient of 2? And if we're looking down in our expression, we see that 2 and a, that the variable a has the coefficient of 2. So for our let statement, we would type let a equal cups of spinach. Notice we're not including the 2 at all, because our expression down here tells us the 2 cups. We're only worried about the variable. The coefficient and the expression tells us how many units of that we have. So the next is tablespoons of olive oil. So I've got 3 tablespoons. When I look in my expression, I see that the coefficient for B is 3, which means I'm going to let B equal tablespoons of olive oil. Next, I have 1.5 teaspoons of salt, and if I'm looking at my expression, I see that 1.5 is the coefficient for the variable C. So I'm going to say let C equal teaspoons of salt. And then lastly, like I said, we have 1 tablespoon of lemon juice. The D is going to represent the lemon juice, even though we could write this as 1D. Haha, like One Direction. But in math, if there's 1 as the coefficient, we typically only see the variable. So then I will let D equal tablespoons of lemon juice. Okay, so that's exactly what you're going to do with your working recipe. You're going to pull your working recipe up. So pause the video and do that right now if you don't have it up. And you're going to match your expression terms. So an example of a term is, 2a is a term, 3b, 1.5c. You're matching those with your ingredients, and you're writing let statements. You're turning these in to Echo in the submission box, in the drop box that's on the agenda. So you're going to upload them here where it says submit here.